Hello, everyone. This is Josh Bersin. It's Sunday, March 22nd, the first or second day of spring, and we're now well into this crisis. And I wanted to give you some perspectives on what I think is going on. Of course, I understand that we're all dealing with some very urgent issues, including the health and safety of our employees, our families, our personal neighbors, our parents, our children. But there's sort of a poignant and ironic thing happening that in the middle of social distancing and worrying about the virus, I think we're getting closer together. You walk down the street, and even though you're walking on the other side of the street from someone, you say hi. I've had phone calls from people I haven't talked to for years, constantly in touch with my family. My children who are not here are around the corner, and we're talking all the time. So this is a really interesting time of crisis and responsibility, but also of connection. And I think I want to give you some perspectives on where we're going. And I'm going to be publishing an article I call The Big Reset. And let me just talk about what that means. First of all, this particular crisis, which is both a health as well as an economic crisis, comes at the end of an 11-year economic growth cycle. I don't think the economy or the US stock market has grown for 11 years, for a very long time, certainly the longest growth cycle I've been through. And it was a little bit fraying at the edges. GDP was up, the unemployment rate was extremely low, but we had a lot of stress. Companies were generating cash, but they didn't know what to do with it, so they were returning it to shareholders. The federal government was generating a debt. Income inequality was rising, and the levels of anxiety, stress, and workplace productivity have been challenged. In fact, one of the reasons we've built so much energy around well-being and the employee experience is because, employees' productivity has been lacking relative to growth. So along comes this crisis, and in many ways, it's resetting where we are. And as negative and difficult and challenging and dangerous and frightening as it may be, I think there's some significant things happening. And let me talk a little bit of what they are. I believe there's 5 of them. The first is what I call reset of work. Yes, we're working at home. And for people like me, I've worked at home for a long time, so I'm quite comfortable with it. But in a lot of companies, this is a new experience. And it isn't just a question of giving everybody a copy of Zoom. There's rules and norms and behaviors and connections that need to be made and tools that need to be integrated. And we need to make this an effective, positive experience for everyone. I visited a lot of companies over the last couple of years that went agile, and they got rid of their offices and they put people in open bullpens and they put up whiteboards and they created all sorts of OKRs, but they also created a lot of stress. And it wasn't clear yet that the digital transformation we've done in our business models and our products had completely taken hold in our workers. And now, during this period, we are going to figure out what digital transformation means for every individual in your company. And I think we're going to be forced to do that. And so that's the number one reset, the reset of work. The second reset is the reset of your budget. Now, whether you like this or not, I'm pretty convinced we're going to have a significant recession. And I don't think it's going to go on for a few months. Most recessions go on for 18 to 24 months, which means that even if you're in a fast-growing company in the healthcare industry, or perhaps in the retail industry or the transportation industry, most of you are going to see some form of budget cut, both in your organization as a whole and perhaps in your workforce. Now, there's a lot of research that's been done on layoffs that shows that even though we have to go through them, or furloughs at various points in time, they can be very damaging to your culture. But separate from that, I think this opportunity to cut budgets in HR is actually a dream come true. And here's my thinking. It's now your opportunity to simplify and reduce bureaucracy at work. And here's why I believe this is important. We have now had 11 years of companies hiring people, promoting new managers, going into new product areas, building new business areas, going into new geographies, piling on and piling on new processes, new ideas, new initiatives, and never getting rid of anything we already had. And we've been basically buckling under the bureaucracy in most big companies. In fact, you'll see some of the research in the article I'm publishing this week that one of the biggest problems we have in employee experience is bureaucracy. And nobody created it on purpose. It's just essentially the symptom of 11 years of growth. And so we now have an opportunity to basically weed the garden and figure out a way to make work simpler. In some ways, it's the application of the Marie Kondo principle of business. Say goodbye to the processes you don't need and thank them for their help. It's zero-based budgeting. When you design something new, think about what you're going to get rid of and start from scratch. Don't just pile it on to what already you have. Lots and lots of ideas on how to do this, and I'll be talking more about it later. The third big reset that I believe we're beginning to see is a reset in leadership. And leadership, as many of you know, is a gigantic, complex topic with many, many dimensions. But it does tend to go in waves. And I think it's iconic that only a month or so ago, Jack Welch, really the icon of top-down, hierarchical, up or out, forced ranking leadership, passed away. Because I think it's time for us to let go of that. We are now in a new world of leadership. And leadership tends to go in philosophical waves. We're entering a wave right now of leadership, which I believe is centered on empathy. Leaders have to feel what your employees feel, particularly now when anyone in your company could get sick, including the CEO. And that sense of empathy and compassion manifests itself in many, many ways. Not only, of course, being empathetic and compassionate to your employees, but also to your customers, your stakeholders, your shareholders, your communities, and the environment around us. You know, companies like Patagonia and companies like Wegmans and companies like Unilever have had this philosophy from their, or Johnson & Johnson have had this philosophy from their founding. It is not a time to focus purely on financial growth. Look at the situation Boeing's going through. Look at the situation Wells Fargo went through. This is a new opportunity to rethink leadership. And added to that is the concepts of growth mindset, curiosity, and empowerment of people, or as one of our clients called it, the unbossed organization. The fourth reset that I think is very significant to think about is a reset in trust. Now, trust is a very complex concept. And I've learned a lot about trust through the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I think is really the iconic research in this area. And what Edelman has shown us is that over the last decade, there has been a tremendous erosion of the public trust. We don't really trust our politicians, certainly not the federal ones. We don't really trust the media and many of the other institutions of our lives, but we do trust our employers. Our employers are, in fact, by far the most trusted institutions in our lives. And now, more than ever, we have to live up to that trust. We have to earn it, and we have to continue to keep it during this very, very difficult and challenging and frightening time. Now, if you decompose trust, it's a very complex thing, but I think it comes down to three simple elements. The first is ethics. Do you tell the truth? Do you tell the whole truth? Do you listen to people? Do you have an ethical framework for making decisions? Do you consider the personal lives of all of your stakeholders? Do you teach your people how to make the right decision under difficult situations? Do you give a voice to values? Can people speak up and express their opinions when they don't feel comfortable about something the company's doing? Those are all part of an ethical framework. The second part of trust is competence. You know, you don't trust a company when the product breaks. You don't trust the airline when the flights are late or the Wi-Fi doesn't work. We have to be exceptionally competent in this particular time. And this is really true in the healthcare and the virus, because if we don't do the right thing, if we don't swab down the buildings, or prevent people from infecting each other, we will be part of the problem, and our employees and stakeholder sense of trust in us will be challenged. And that goes for HR too. This is not a time to slapdash together some HR program and throw it out there. It has to be good. It has to work. You have to stick behind it. You have to iteratively improve it, and you have to hold yourself accountable for the highest quality interactions with every employee at this particular time. The third part of trust is voice, listening, understanding. You know, when you have a friend and they don't listen to you, you often don't trust them. And that true goes for companies too. I can't tell you how many times I've had a situation with a company that has done something that I didn't like, and there was no way I could reach them. And there was a little piece of information in my brain that was just activated that said, you know what, I don't trust these guys because I don't know what they're going to do next. And that means we have to avoid that. And that's far beyond employee pulse surveys or annual surveys. This is a culture of listening and acting on every single individual's feedback in your company and in your entire supply chain and customer chain. So that's the fourth aspect of this reset, is really getting centered on trust. And the final one, number 5, is really about us. And I think this is the reset of HR. HR, as you know, has been through quite a journey, from the back office payroll department to the service delivery organization to the consulting organization to now what I believe we are, which is the heroes in many ways of the companies and of the company. You and your team are responsible for crisis communications, policies, programs, cleanliness, safety, things right now which are absolutely front of mind for every worker in your organization. And we have to do these things fast and effectively and in a team-oriented way. Now, we are doing a lot of work on HR transformation, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that right now. But this is a reset for HR. If you think you're going to slowly evolve your HR department and buy a new piece of software and spend 2 years fixing it and getting it to work, not right now. We have to take action quickly. This means operating in an agile way, skilling yourselves to be the experts that you are, and cross-training to work together, and making sure you hold yourself accountable to be the heroes that the company needs. So that's a little bit of thinking about this reset. Now, let me just summarize with one sort of positive idea. We are not really into the worst of this yet. It's pretty clear that the epidemic or the pandemic's going to get worse before it gets better. But as I mentioned in the very beginning, we are becoming closer together. This is an opportunity for all of us to really relate to each other in a new way. And if you just think a little bit about these 5 shifts, the reset of work, the reset of your budget and priorities, the reset of your leadership, the reset of your sense of trust, and the reset of what you do in HR, I think it will guide you into the weeks and months ahead as we work our way through this crisis and come out the other end. This is the first time I've self-authored a video like this, and I will do more of this if you like it, so please let me know what you think. This week we are launching the Remote Work Bootcamp, which is a program I'm really excited about and I think you'll all find really, really exciting. And we are also going to have a pretty significant webinar on March 31st with some of our largest CHROs, largest company CHROs, talking about how they're dealing with the crisis, and I look forward to talking to you then. In the meantime, if any of you want to talk to me, please send me a message and I'll be happy to get on a Zoom call and we can talk about what's going on in your company. Thank you. Have a great week.